Hi, and welcome back to Digital Defense. I am your host, Jordan Robertson. We are broadcasting to you live from the Bloomberg News, Washington, D.C. News Bureau. This is our weekly show on cybersecurity and digital privacy, hoping to provide you with some tips and tricks to secure your digital lives. This week's topic, I should also mention, as always, and you'll hear me say this ad nauseum, this is an interactive show. So we've got a topic we're going to be talking about today, which is cryptocurrency mining and a new kind of innovative approach to monetizing online content via cryptocurrency mining. But this is an interactive show, so if you have any questions about the topic we're discussing today, or any other cybersecurity or digital privacy topic, please feel free to write them in the comment section, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Periscope, or wherever you may be seeing this feed. We'd love to answer as many questions as you got. So today, what I want to talk about, as I said, was cryptocurrency mining. Bitcoin and Monero and other cryptocurrencies are all the rage right now. And this week, we saw a very interesting experiment take hold from Salon.com. Many folks in the Twitter sphere began noticing this week that if they had an ad blocker on their machine and they went to Salon.com, they would get, with this kind of a standard notice these days, which is please, turn off your ad blocker so we're able to sell you ads and show you ads, and that helps, fund the website and journalism. But if you take a look at the bottom line here, this is what was really different. Salon.com, in addition to saying, encouraging users and viewers to disable their ad blocker so they can show more ads, also said if you don't want to suppress your ad blocker, you have another alternative. And that alternative is to keep your ad blocker, but allow Salon.com to do something in the background, which is pretty unique. And what that thing is Salon.com would say in exchange for keeping your ads, in exchange for keeping your ads blocked, you allow the website to mine cryptocurrency using your computer while you're on the website. Now, this is a kind of radical idea. As everybody knows, the news business is under tremendous pressure and has been, really for over a decade. And news businesses are trying any ways they can think of to monetize their content. The subscriber model has worked very well for companies like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and others. Salon.com is trying a different approach, and it's quite innovative. Now, what we're going to talk about on the show today is not whether this is going to be a lucrative revenue stream for for that company or any of the business implications. What we're going to talk about are the cybersecurity and privacy implications of allowing websites to mine cryptocurrencies on your machine in exchange for some sort of service. It's a very interesting topic. We talked about cryptocurrency on previous episodes of this show, and this practice does carry some cybersecurity and privacy implications that I want you to know about. So again, this is Salon.com, but they're kind of the tip of the spear, if you will, in terms of being really kind of radical and experimental in trying this approach. But I want to show you what exactly is going on behind the scenes. And for those of you just joining us, again, this is an interactive show, so feel free to send in any questions you have into the comments section, and we'll get to as many of them as we can right here. So behind the scenes, and we just use the Salon.com example as kind of as the reference point today, but there are other websites that do the same thing. What Salon.com is basically asking you to do is to free up and unlock some of your unused CPU resources. As many of you will know, logging into a website or browsing a website is a very low intensity activity for your computer. Your CPU generally, your central processing unit, the main chip on your computer, generally doesn't have to do too much to load a website, to load a web page, bring up a news article. The type of content that Salon.com serves is not generally kind of high intensity in terms of your compute resources. So what it needs to do is allow a program to run in the background that does this cryptocurrency mining. And a very, very short primer on what cryptocurrency mining is. Cryptocurrency works on a public ledger called the blockchain. Everybody's heard of this by now. All that really is a public document of a public repository of calculations and lists of transactions that have occurred for a given type of cryptocurrency. To arrive at that blockchain, to create that blockchain, computers are doing increasingly complicated math to validate those transactions. That's what goes into creating the blockchain. Programs like one called CoinHive have sprouted up that allow websites to do exactly what Salon.com is proposing to do, is saying, hey, website, you're looking to create a little bit extra income. Why don't you propose this to your visitors? Say, hey, as long as you're on the website, run this program, allow this program to run on your computer, and in exchange, you'll be generating Bitcoin for the website. And in exchange, you'll get access to whatever service you're trying to access. So CoinHive on its own is a very simple program. It runs in your web browser. It uses JavaScript. Just like any ad program that runs on your computer, it works very much in a similar way. But it does something interesting when it's on your machine. We're getting some good questions in here, so I'll get to some of these in just a minute. Thank you for writing in. Please keep them coming. You may not be able to see this, but what a program like CoinHive does is, again, it uses unused CPU resources on your computer. So let's say loading the website takes 1% of your CPU usage. I'm just making these numbers up. For the other 99%, there could be potential value to be unlocked in kind of running your machine, running calculations on them, and using them for some other purpose. That on its own creates some potential issues. One of them is that your performance could lag. If you're running a PC and you're running your computer, and you've got some additional process running in the background, some CPU-intensive process, that can slow your computer down. But that's really not what we're here to talk about today. We're talking about what are the security and privacy implications of allowing this third-party program to run on your computer. And before I get to some of these really good questions, I'll just very plainly state, anytime you're allowing third-party code to run on your computer, even if it's from a brand like CoinHive, which is pretty well known, you run the risk of that code being infected. And as an example of this, I want to show you one thing. This was an article from Motherboard not too long ago, that the creators of CoinHive say their reputation couldn't be much worse. Now, what they mean by that is most major antivirus engines actually block CoinHive from operating on your machine. They have flagged it as malicious, because what's happening is this program is running JavaScript on your computer and using your CPU resources for things that you are not intending it to do. It is not just as simple as showing you an ad. What it's doing is actually taking control of a piece of your computer and using it for something else. That's why the antivirus engines say, no way, we're not going to let this, we're not going to allow this to run here. But as you can see with the Salon.com example, there may be reasons why you would want that code to run. So as always, my advice is, if you're going to authorize third-party code to run on your computer, you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. We allow third-party code to run on our computers all the time. Again, ad programs and such. That's one of the reasons that ad blockers are so valuable, not just to clean up the clutter on your machine, but also to prevent a lot of unwanted scripts from running on your computer that could be infected. So that's just a big thing to remember. If you're going to go down this path, just remember you're allowing third-party code to run on your computer, and that potentially could be infected. Thanks everybody who's writing with questions. Please keep them coming. I'll get to a few of them here. First question here is, so this company will use my computer CPU cycle to mine cryptocurrency, right? Yes, that's correct. Your CPU, CPUs in general are very underutilized, whether it's your desktop or laptop or even corporate servers. This is what the whole virtualization movement is about. Is you've got a lot of wasted resources. You pay for this expensive machine, and you're not using it all. Now, for most of us, that's the way we want it. We want as little junk as possible on our machines or in our browsers so that we can have as fast an experience as possible. What Salon.com is exploring here is the idea of what if we just took a piece of that unused CPU resource and used it for this other thing. In effect, you're paying for the service, you're paying for access to the website, just in a different way than handing over cash. It's an interesting idea, but it does come with potential risks, as I mentioned. Next question here is this the first time we've heard about something like this happening? Is it possible other sites and companies are doing this without telling us? Great question, one that leads right into this Motherboard article that I've highlighted here. Other websites are absolutely using services like CoinHive and others to mine cryptocurrency on visitors' machines. The problem is, and the reason this story existed, was because many websites were doing it without their users' knowledge or consent. Salon.com is obviously a reputable and legitimate news organization, so they're going to provide transparency to their users about, hey, we want to do this to your computer, will you let us? But the problem is, and again, I can't stress this enough, when you visit a website, you're not just getting the website itself, you are getting all kinds of third-party code bombarding your computer. Third-party code in many cases, which the website doesn't even know it's really hosting. It knows, hey, I've plugged into some ad program, they're going to show my viewers ads based on cookies they've collected from around the internet. The websites don't have control over that code in many cases. So anytime you visit a website, you've got third-party code running on your computer, which is why I always recommend turn on ad blocker. If you're really extreme, turn on no script, which is a plugin that blocks all scripts from running on your computer. It hinders your usability of websites a little bit, but in terms of safety and security, it's highly valuable. So what's been happening, and the reason CoinHive is getting flagged as malware, is websites are doing this without their users' knowledge. So you go to some website, probably a dodgier type of website, and they're just running this in the background. It's not an infection per se. It doesn't stay there when you leave that web page, but for as long as you're on that website, it's running in the background, heating up your computer and using it to mine cryptocurrencies. So very sketchy, very kind of gray market behavior, but it doesn't have to be. I guess that's the point. So yeah, other companies are using this. It's a question of how transparent do you want to be with users. And this question raises another point, which I found interesting about the Salon example. You know, you may not see it here, but Salon.com had a very interesting approach. What they did was they would ask your permission, you know, to do this thing. But the problem was the program began running before you could click yes. So even though you're getting transparency, and presumably if you click no, the thing stops, but I don't know that for sure. The problem is these are scripts that just run when you start the website. So, you know, even if you're providing transparency, you know, allowing a third party in to use your computer resources, again, it could have value. Like regular viewers of this show will know, I'm not here to tell you the sky is falling, unplug your computer, don't use any digital technologies, because that's just not really useful for, you know, having an enjoyable life. So if it's valuable enough to you to access a site like Salon with your ad blocker enabled, and it's not too much of an inconvenience to try this experiment and access the content that way, then go for it. But you do need to know that there are some risks. And the next question here is, what if you just leave Salon.com open in a browser and walk away? You're not an active user at that point. Do they still use your computer? My understanding is absolutely. The CEO, who, again, I give them credit for trying. Anybody in the news business knows it's hard out there. So if a news business is trying something interesting and above board, you know, to generate revenue, then more power to them. Part of the problem here is one of transparency, but even more than that, the way cryptocurrencies work now, it's far more effective and efficient to locate giant server farms near very cheap sources of energy. So next to hydroelectric dams, you know, things like that. That's the reason there are a lot of big tech companies up in Oregon and places like that. Cheap energy. Mining cryptocurrencies is very, very, very CPU intensive. You know, how much value can actually be extracted from your computer running for 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe? You know, probably less than that. The average time people spend on websites is measured in a matter of minutes, single digits. So, and sometimes in a matter of seconds. So how much money could Salon.com or any other website actually generate using this technique? Not a lot if they're doing it kind of the legitimate way. But in response to this question, the CEO of Salon.com, or the publisher, said this could be used to help fund long-form investigative journalism, kind of the cream of the crop type of journalism, because the longer you spend on a web page, the more cryptocurrency the company can mine and the more money it makes. So in effect, it's a potentially very interesting and compelling idea. And if you do want to support high-quality journalism, investigative long-form journalism, you know, spending more time engaged with a story, you wind up basically paying the company more to support more material like that. So in principle, it's an idea that kind of a lot of people can get behind. Next question here is, how do you find out if this is happening to you? Is it only Salon.com? Another good question. We know about Salon.com because they have announced it this week. They've been showing some viewers, I've heard from others that they weren't prompted, they weren't given this prompt, So it appears to be kind of a targeted experiment. Salon.com has announced this to viewers that they're doing it. Part of the problem is if you are engaged with a website, and let's say you're not technical. I'm not a technical person. I write about cybersecurity. I know a lot about the industry. I know a lot about how the technology works, but I personally am not technical. So if you're not technical like me, how are you supposed to inspect your web session to figure out, is this happening to your computer? There are some ways, but they're a little cumbersome. It involves checking your CPU usage. It involves checking what third-party code is running from that website on your machine. That's not impossible. It takes a few clicks, which I won't go into here because there are many different ways to do it. But with a few clicks, there are a few ways to investigate, is there something unusual happening to your computer? Looking at CPU usage is kind of the main one. That's going to be the easiest one to take a look at because it will show you a baseline. It will show you how much of your CPU do you normally use versus how much are you using now, and if you see some kind of spike. Or if you notice a slowdown, let me back up. If you notice some sort of grave slowdown when you're visiting a website, now again, I gotta say, this would mostly happen on what I would consider more gray market type of websites. Like, above board websites do not want to alienate their users by doing this in secret. Because if users find out that they're doing it in secret, they're gonna push people away. So, but if you're going to a website and you notice all of a sudden your computer slows way down, check out your CPU usage. If it just spikes and goes all the way up for no obvious reason, they may be running one of these types of programs in the background, which again, not to sound like a broken record, is all the more reason to disable both to enable ad blocker and to disable JavaScript. The two best plugins for that are ad blocker and NoScript. The one caveat again with NoScript is it does kind of cripple certain website functions, and it can be hard to view certain kind of interactive features and things like that. However, you can be assured at that point there's not unauthorized code running from that website to your computer. So that's quite a useful tool. Another good question here. Can you explain how some external party is able to access the CPU on someone else's computer? It's a really valid question. Like, if I'm visiting a website, how can you reach into my computer and access my CPU? Well, I'm being a little flip when I say they just reach in and grab your CPU. What they're doing is the website is authorizing, because you're allowing this third-party code to run on your computer. And again, 99% of the stuff is ad stuff, bloatware, adware, like just kind of annoying stuff, spammy ad things that run on websites. But when you allow code to run on your computer, those are just instructions to the computer to go do something. And most of the time it's, let me show you an annoying ad. In this case, it's like, computer, go perform all these calculations that we're going to present to you. And in exchange for that, when you hit on certain conclusions, resolutions to these problems, you kind of win or mine these Bitcoins. So when that happens, the company gets those Bitcoins, which again, we've covered in a previous show. What a Bitcoin is essentially kind of a private key. It's just a string of numbers and letters. It's a private key that unlocks that monetary value on these websites. So that's really it. I mean, your browser is allowing a process to occur on your computer that, again, for the most part, is just ad stuff. But in this case, it's telling your computer to do something else. It's not malicious, but it is potentially unwanted. And it is potentially dangerous if any of this third-party code, and we see this all the time, third-party code running through web browsers is kind of the bane of the internet's existence. More so than APT attacks, more so than nation-state government stuff. The majority, I would say, of internet hacks, or many of them, I should say, occur through this kind of exchange of data when you go to a website that you don't really know is happening. So that's why many of the smartest people I know, when they're browsing the web, they're using ad blocker, they're using NoScript, and some of them are using even more advanced tools. But those are the two that I would recommend to kind of the average user, of which I consider myself one. Next question here is, if we're getting lots of good questions. Thank you for writing in, and please keep them coming. If the websites slow you down, can you override the mining and stop it? Yeah, you can. I mean, it depends how transparent the website is being. In Salon's case, you'd hope that when you click no, the mining stops. If it's a kind of a more surreptitious mining, which again is why the CoinHive creators said they never expected their technology would be used in these kind of illicit ways. There are technical ways to stop it, but the easiest way to stop it is to simply close out of the website. It's basically an infection at that point on that website. So what hackers were doing, this is an interesting backstory, what hackers were doing was they were taking CoinHive, which is a legitimate product, right? to help websites monetize their content. They were taking that plugin, that module, and they were hacking websites, and they were putting it on those websites. So if you're going to a gray market site that wants to monetize your time on that site, let's call it like a pornography site or something. They are notorious, or a gambling site, notorious for having all this kind of stuff on there. The mining is going to occur in the background kind of with the consent of that website operator and the intent of that website operator. If your website is hacked, and this is happening in the background without the website's knowledge because they didn't know that they're hacked, the only real way to stop that that's kind of easy is just click out of the website. The more technical ways, stopping certain scripts, turning off scripts, things like that, I'll leave that for the more technical audience. But really, if you notice that this is happening and you don't want it to, and the site is not telling you it's happening, they may be hacked. And this is a very new kind of threat vector. Typically, when sites get hacked, it's so that the hackers can put malware on your computer and capture your banking passwords and things like that. In this case, they're trying to use your computer to mine Bitcoin. It's a new type of threat. Question here is, will it run even after I've closed the website? Well, it shouldn't. And this is an important point to make. What these are not exploits. These are not exploits against your computer to allow the attackers to run code even when you've left the website. Now, they could couple these tools with exploits. And we've seen that as well, is that hackers want to hack people's computers to do effectively the same thing. But that's kind of a different attack. That is a computer attack, a cyber attack that, that relates to cyber crime. These are criminals who want to hack your computer to use it to mine Bitcoin without your knowledge or consent, without the knowledge or consent of the websites you visit. That's just a straight up cyber criminal hack. What we're talking about here are legitimate websites that either employ these technologies willingly, as a way to monetize their content, or websites that are compromised and these technologies employed to kind of take advantage of their users' CPU resources. So, long answer to a short question, but if the question is, will this code run even after I've closed the website? Unless this code is coupled with an exploit against your browser or your computer or your operating system, whatever, the answer is going to be no. The code is going to stop the moment you stop running the website. Again, though, if a cyber criminal is intent on getting into your computer to make it part of these cryptocurrency mining botnets, they could easily couple this tool with an exploit, get on your computer, and then in that case, it would continue running without your knowledge. But they got to be careful, because if they're too aggressive, you're going to know that your computer has slowed down. You're probably going to investigate. If you run antivirus, you can probably wipe the program pretty easily with that. Let's see here. Does this also work on mobile phone browsers? As far as I'm aware, it works the same on a mobile phone as it does on laptops or desktops. There is one caveat. Depending on which operating system you're using for your mobile phone, there are certain barriers to what ads can be shown. For example, if you're on an iOS device, as most people know, Apple is much stronger about user privacy and security than the Google ecosystem, which is totally open. Apple's closed ecosystem allows it to be stricter about what programs run on their devices. So it's harder to get unauthorized code to run on those devices, but it's not impossible. It just depends on how sophisticated the attackers are. Do you think other sites will adopt the same process as Salon? It depends on how successful it is. The reason I don't think this is going to necessarily catch fire is twofold. One, we've seen for the news business, of which I am a card-carrying member, I have a deep personal investment in the outcome of these things, is we've seen the subscription model for high-quality journalism work. We've seen it work at the New York Times. They're doing great with their subscriptions. We've seen it at the Washington Post. We've seen it at the Wall Street Journal. Seen it at the Financial Times. The Bloomberg model is different than most news companies, but there are many Bloomberg users who pay the terminal subscription for access to Bloomberg breaking news. That's a key selling point. So subscription models in general work. We've seen that. The problem, a decade or so ago, was that news sites didn't want to go there. They didn't want to risk being shut out of Google or kind of abandoned because they were charging and others weren't. Now that more news sites are charging subscription fees, it's a proven model. This Bitcoin thing isn't a proven model, and the reason I don't think it's necessarily going to catch fire is, as I mentioned earlier, to mine cryptocurrency effectively, you've got to do one of two things. You got to be a hacker who gets into lots and lots of people's computers and just has them running all the time without their knowledge to generate a lot of transactions. Or you're a legitimate company that locates hundreds and hundreds or thousands of servers near a cheap electricity source, such as a hydroelectric plant, so that you can just perform these calculations all the time. That's kind of the state of the art when it comes to cryptocurrency mining. Very hard to do as an individual. You've got to be kind of an advanced operation. You've got to have a lot of resources, and you can do that through hacking, or you can do that through legitimate means. Will somebody spending 3 or 4 minutes on a website, will that generate enough income for these websites to really make a difference? Maybe. I mean, I hope it works. I hope it's really successful. But I just think the subscription model for the bean counter types at these companies is going to be much more predictable, much more reliable, and they can make hiring decisions based on that. And that's really the key here, is when you're a CFO for one of these news companies and you're debating, how much hiring can we do this year? You want a reliable stream of revenue, and subscriptions provide that. So far, the cryptocurrency mining doesn't. It's very new. A lot of great questions here. Thank you for these. Is my electricity bill going to go up because my computer is being used for mining? The answer is yes. You may not see the same spike that you would if you're running your air conditioner on max, or your refrigerator at the coldest temperature, which are two of the biggest consumers of power. A side note: another big consumer of power in your home, a piece of digital technology, is your DVR machine. DVR machines are notorious power hogs. So you're not going to see the kind of power consumption that exists on those machines generally, because you'd have to run your machine. These cryptocurrency programs would have to run your machine kind of like all the way out, and at that point, you're not getting the value from that machine. It's running slower, it's loading slower. You're just not going to be part of that operation at that point. But yes, your electricity usage will go up because your computer, anybody who's got a modern laptop will know you run it long enough, it gets physically hot. Maybe it doesn't light on fire like some of these malfunctioning machines do, but it gets physically hot. And when it gets physically hot, it's because you're consuming electricity to make that happen. So yes, your electric bill could go up, but you'd have to do an awful lot of crypto mining to really see that happen. But that's one of the reasons that these crypto farms exist near cheap sources of energy, because it takes a lot of electricity to perform these calculations and to run the processor. That's literally what you're doing. You're running the processor, you're running the hard drive, and that's what takes up so much resource. With that, we're out of time here. I really thank you for these questions. It seems like there's a lot of interest in this topic. I'm certainly going to keep following it from both a media standpoint and a cybersecurity and privacy standpoint. If you have any other questions, please feel free to find me on Twitter. I'm at JordanR1000, Jordan, the letter R, the number 1000. You can DM me or tweet at me there. Also, please feel free to check out our website, which is bloomberg.com/technology. You'll see archived editions of this webcast, as well as another by my colleague Mark Gurman called Gadgets with Gurman. We've also got a podcast there called Decrypted, which we put a lot of effort into, and we really think is a neat product. So please feel free to check out those products, and thanks again for watching. We'll be back at our usual time, noon Eastern, next week here on Digital Defense. Thanks for watching.